Good day, everyone. We are Group 2, and today we will be presenting Module for Understanding the Drug and the Concept of Drug Prevention and Control. This topic is important because drugs can affect our health, behavior, and future. Some drugs are helpful, especially when used as medicine, but when used the wrong way, they can be dangerous. That's why we also need to understand drug prevention and control, which means stopping drug abuse before it starts, spreading awareness, and helping people live healthier, drug-free lives. Now let's move on to Module 4.1. First, let's understand the difference between drugs and drug abuse. Drugs are substances that can affect the body or mind. Some are legal and used as medicine. On the other hand is drug abuse. It is when drugs are used the wrong way, like taking too much, using without a prescription, or using illegal drugs. Drug education plays a crucial role in helping people make informed choices and avoid the dangers of drug abuse. It supports the goal of building a healthier and safer community.
What is drug abuse? Drug abuse occurs when an individual has grown extremely reliant on drugs to keep their body functioning, often being caused due to taking drugs in such incredible doses or consistently taking drugs. Individuals who are under the influence of drug abuse will do anything they can to satisfy their addiction because their bodies now physically need the drugs. When they're under a lack of drugs, be it the lack of money to pay for more, deciding to quit so suddenly, or having their drugs confiscated, individuals can suffer from withdrawal, from shaking, sweating, and becoming anxious. It can quickly become more dangerous if not treated to a rehabilitation center. Shaking can quickly turn into seizures, and anxiety can turn into delirium if withdrawal is left unchecked, which is why many individuals who had abused drugs are sent to rehabilitation centers to minimize the withdrawal and lead them to a better life.
Why do people turn to drugs? There are many reasons why people often turn to drugs. Many reasons are unjustifiable while others are semi-justifiable, but still wrong. Drugs are never meant to be a solution, but there are still many reasons why people are often using drugs, for example. 1. Peer pressure. People who turn to drugs are likely pressured by their peers, whether they're a classmate, a co-worker, or a friend. People don't want to be seen as uncool by their peers, or simply don't want to be left out, so they turn to drugs because everyone else is doing it. 2. Curiosity. People who turn to drugs are likely just curious about how it would feel to use drugs. They may be curious as to what they would experience, whether it would feel amazing or not, or whether or not they would use it again. More often than not, the curious individuals return to using drugs after their first time. 3. Adventure. Many individuals turn to drugs because they just feel like it. They're rather adventurous and tend to do the wrong decisions most of the time. Taking drugs is one of those wrong decisions, and their lives could be ruined all because of them being adventurous in the wrong areas. 4. Feel good. It just feels good. That's why people use drugs. They don't have any other reason to do it other than it just feels good to have it mess with your brain. However, many of these individuals started out with a different reason, and that is 5. Escape from reality. Mainly the reason why so many people use drugs, aside from the reasons already listed, is because they need an escape from reality. They're often challenged and beat down by the truths of reality, and they turn to drugs to lift their stress or hardships aside, unknowingly making their lives worse in the process. 6. Easy access to drugs. In many countries and places around the world, getting your hands on drugs is almost as easy as buying candy from the store, which means that with such easy access to drugs, people who are curious, adventurous, or are already addicted can buy more and more drugs with ease, as long as they have the money to pay for it. This often leads to drug abuse among young adults and can lead to overdose. Speaking of drug abuse,
What is drug abuse? Drug abuse occurs when an individual has grown extremely reliant on drugs to keep their body functioning, often being caused due to taking drugs in such incredible doses or consistently taking drugs. Individuals who are under the influence of drug abuse will do anything they can to satisfy their addiction because their bodies now physically need the drugs. When they're under a lack of drugs, be it the lack of money to pay for more, deciding to quit so suddenly, or having their drugs confiscated, individuals can suffer from withdrawal, from shaking, sweating, and becoming anxious. It can quickly become more dangerous if not treated to a rehabilitation center. Shaking can quickly turn into seizures, and anxiety can turn into delirium if withdrawal is left unchecked, which is why many individuals who had abused drugs are sent to rehabilitation centers to minimize the withdrawal and lead them to a better life.
Addiction is not just about using drugs, it's about how these substances slowly take control of a person's life. When someone becomes addicted, their brain changes. They start craving the drugs so much that it becomes very hard to stop, even if they want to. At first, it might feel like just trying something new, but over time, the body and mind become dependent on it. The next one is identify the kind of substance abuse most commonly abused drugs and their effects. Methamphetamine hydrochloride, more commonly known as shabu in the Philippines, is a powerful and highly addictive stimulant drug. It directly affects the brain and nervous system. The drug harms the brain by altering its normal function. One of the main chemicals in the brain that it affects is dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a key role. Here are some of the effects of drugs on a person who has used them: extreme weight loss, severe dental problems, anxiety, confusion, insomnia, mood disturbances, and violent behavior. Drugs affect many parts of the body because they travel through the blood, reach the brain, and interfere with natural chemicals that control many body functions. These effects make drugs one of the most dangerous drugs, with long-term damage that can be permanent. One of the most dangerous drugs is methamphetamine, also known as shabu or meth. While some people take it for a temporary feeling of energy and euphoria, the consequences are very serious. Some of the other adverse effects include extreme weight loss, because meth suppresses appetite. Users often become dangerously thin. Severe dental problems, or what we call meth mouth. This happens because the drug dries out the mouth, damages the teeth, and causes severe tooth decay. Anxiety and confusion. Users often feel restless, worried, and disoriented. Insomnia, they may stay awake for several days, leading to physical and mental exhaustion. Mood disturbances, users may quickly shift from feeling high to becoming depressed or irritable. Violent behavior, because of paranoia and aggression. Users can become a danger not only to themselves but also to others. Another commonly abused drug is cannabis sativa, more popularly known as marijuana. Its main active ingredient is THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol, which is responsible for the high that users feel. However, it comes with many harmful effects. Impaired memory and focus. Users may find it hard to concentrate or remember things. Disrupted coordination, balance, posture, and reaction time. This explains why some users appear to be spacing out. Reduced ability to learn and perform complex tasks. Long-term use makes it harder to do schoolwork, jobs, or daily responsibilities. Negative effects on sports and driving, because of slower reaction time and poor coordination. Accidents are more likely. Serious health risks. Chronic use may cause lung cancer, respiratory illnesses, and even weaken the immune system.
1. Since THC interferes with short-term memory, it targets the hippocampus, which can result in long-term memory loss. Effects differ depending on the context. 2. Marijuana distorts perspective by changing the senses, modifying body awareness, and occasionally generating hallucinations. Effects depend on the user and the dose. 3. Because of its impacts on brain function, cannabis consumption can impair a person's problem-solving and cognitive capacity. THC, a major ingredient of cannabis, impairs memory and cognitive abilities necessary for efficient problem-solving and thinking processes. 4. Because cannabis changes the areas of the brain governing mobility and balance, it lowers movement control, less control over interpersonal skills, and a higher risk of accidents might follow from this. And also, cannabis can make the heart beat faster and can raise blood pressure immediately after use. Cannabis sativa has gotten street names like marijuana, jutes, pot, grass, damo, and chunky. These are slang terms that people use to hide their usage, make users feel like they are part of a community, and show how different cultures and regions use the word.
Inhalants. Now let's move on to inhalants. These are substances that people inhale to get a quick high. The effects are quite similar to alcohol. For example, they can cause slurred speech, poor coordination, and dizziness. Users may also feel a temporary sense of extreme happiness. However, these effects come with dangerous risks, because abusers can also experience lightheadedness, hallucinations, and even delusions. This means that inhalants don't just affect the body physically, but also distort the way the brain processes reality. Harmful irreversible effects of inhalants include: the most alarming part about inhalants is their long-term and often irreversible damage. Prolonged abuse can cause hearing loss and uncontrollable limb spasms. More seriously, they can damage the central nervous system and the brain permanently, leading to memory problems and loss of basic functions. Inhalants can also harm the bone marrow, which weakens the body's ability to produce healthy blood cells. These harmful effects show us that while inhalants may seem like a cheap and accessible substance, the damage they cause is extremely serious and life-changing.
There are many signs for you to identify if an individual is on drugs, such as changes in appearance, mood, behavior, and interest.
With the increase of using drugs, it brings certain side effects that can negatively affect the individual, the first being on mental health and its psychological effects on an individual. It causes disturbance in perception, which is related to auditory or visual hallucination, seeing or hearing things that are not there in their imagination. It also causes disturbance in orientation wherein the individual experiences paranoia or psychosis. It also causes disturbance in memory wherein the individual cannot remember certain or simple things, and it causes disturbance in judgment, wherein the individual may experience depression, which could lead them to suicide, or can permanently impair their judgment, views, and opinions of others. Several effects of drugs. B. Physical health, physiological effects. 1. Cardiac heart pathology. Cardiac arrest is something that people suffer from, especially the elderly. It's no joke because it's more frightening to attack people, especially when it's hot because people's hearts constrict, and it's harder to find or get oxygen out of the body, especially for drug users. The more they use, the more our hearts overdose and the more constricted or other effects on the heart when they overdose on drugs. 2. Pulmonary lungs illness. Pulmonary lung illness is a disease of our lungs, where we have difficulty breathing, just like asthma, because when our lungs become congested, or they are not under control, we have more difficulty breath in. That's why people with lung disease shouldn't be tired and more easily affected by hot weather, where there's no air to breathe, and it can other result heart disease, pneumonia, and other health issue. 3. Hepatic liver problems. Hepatic or liver disease. This is the disease or problem with the kidneys, liver of a person. First of all, jaundice skin. Jaundice is seen in the skin of a person when there is a problem with the liver. The skin or eyes of a person turn yellow when he has a problem. In addition to this, liver disease or the cause is the formation of stones that grow if not treated and eating salty foods. Here are the additional causes or signs of symptoms of liver disease: dark urine, itchy skin, abdominal pain, and fatigue. 4. Renal kidney disease. Renal kidney disease is caused in people who have high blood pressure or high blood sugar in our body, because every time the blood pressure in the body increases, the more damage a person's kidneys will suffer because it affects the support of the person's blood. When the damage is more due to high blood sugar in the body, the more damage he will suffer to his filter or the kidney itself, and it will not be able to filter good blood flow in the kidney or human body. The different classification of drug abuser and how to prevent it, and here are the 5 classifications of drug abusers. Experimenters. Experimenters are people who try drugs out of curiosity, often just to see what it feels like or to fit in socially. They usually don't intend to use regularly and may only try it once or a few times. For many, it's part of exploring new experiences, especially during adolescence or young adulthood. However, even casual experimenting can sometimes lead to more frequent use or unexpected consequences. It's important to understand that experimenters aren't always trying to escape something. Sometimes they're just trying to belong or understand themselves. Occasional users. Occasional drug users are people who use drugs now and then, often during social events or stressful times, but it's not a regular part of their routine. They don't usually feel dependent on the substance, and they might go weeks or months without using it. Regular users. Regular drug users are people who have started using drugs on a consistent basis, maybe every weekend, after work, or whenever they feel stressed. Drug dependent. Drug dependent users are people who feel like they can't get through the day without using a substance. Their body and mind have become so used to the drug that without it, they may feel sick, anxious, or completely lost. Mentally chemical abusers. Some drug users become chemically dependent meaning their bodies actually need the drug to feel normal and avoid painful withdrawal symptoms. Others are more mentally or psychologically dependent, using drugs to cope with emotions like stress, sadness, or anxiety, even if their body doesn't physically crave the substance. Withdrawal symptoms. Drug dependency. Withdrawal syndrome occurs after the sudden reduction or cessation of a substance that was used heavily and for a prolonged period. It is characterized by a group of physical and psychological symptoms that are specific to the substance used. Need to take drugs to overcome withdrawal symptoms. When someone needs to take a drug just to avoid withdrawal symptoms, it means their body has become physically dependent on it. Withdrawal symptoms happen when the body struggles to function normally without the drug. Symptoms. Drug dependency or substance use disorder is diagnosed when someone shows at least 2 out of 11 specific symptoms within a year. These symptoms include loss of control over drug use, like using more than intended or being unable to stop. Compulsion. Compulsion in drug dependency means a person feels a strong, often overwhelming urge to use a drug. Even when they want to stop or know it's causing harm, they continue using it. This happens because the brain becomes wired to seek the drug, making it hard to resist. Tolerance relapse. Tolerance means that over time, a person needs to take more of a drug to feel the same effects they once got from smaller amounts. This happens because the body and brain adapt to the presence of the drug. Relapse is when someone returns to drug use after trying to stop or staying clean for a while. Reduce social, occupational act. When someone starts using drugs, they might stop doing things they used to love, like hanging out with friends or enjoying hobbies. Work or school can also take a back seat because the drug becomes the main focus. Over time, their world shrinks as the drug takes up more and more of their time and energy.
How can you stay away from drugs?
Devote yourself to your studies and other productive activities at home or school. Stay away from people, places, and events that promote drugs use. Learn to manage feelings and cope with stress without using drugs. Develop a strong moral and spiritual foundation. Educated yourself about the effects of drugs abuse always says no.
When it comes to drugs, the best way to avoid getting addicted is to never try them in the first place. Even using drugs or alcohol once can be risky. Some people are more likely to get addicted because of their genes or mental health. What may seem like harmless fun can quickly turn into a serious problem. So staying away from drugs completely is the safest choice. Prevention is key when experimenting with drugs. Prevention is the key to avoiding drug addiction. Trying drugs or alcohol even once can be dangerous and may lead to dependence. Some people are more at risk due to genetics or mental health issues. What starts as casual use can turn into long-term addiction. The safest way to prevent drug addiction is to abstain from the start.
When life becomes stressful, instead of using drugs or alcohol to forget our problems, we should learn better ways to cope, like talking to someone, staying active, relaxing, and facing our challenges. By handling pressure in a healthy way, we can avoid being tempted to use drugs or drinking alcohol.
2. Don't give in to peer pressure. The text explains that some teenagers and young adults experiment with drugs to appear cool and fit in with their friends. They may wrongly believe that using drugs or alcohol will make them more acceptable or popular. The message emphasizes that resisting peer pressure can prevent drug addiction.
Research has shown that people who share a close and healthy relationship with their families are far less likely to become addicted to drugs. Why is that? It's because family members provide not only love, but also guidance and emotional support. When an individual feels supported and understood at home, they develop resilience in dealing with stress, anxiety, and other pressures of life. Instead of turning to harmful substances as a way of coping, they are more likely to lean on their family for help and comfort. But this protective factor doesn't stop with family alone. The kind of friends we choose also plays a huge role. Having responsible, trustworthy, and positive friends helps an individual avoid risky behaviors, including drug use. Friends can either influence us in a good way or a harmful way. When we surround ourselves with peers who value responsibility and self-discipline, it becomes easier to resist negative temptations. In summary, strong family bonds and supportive friendships act as protective shields. They don't just prevent someone from falling into addiction, but they also help build a healthier, more stable, and more meaningful life. This is why it's so important to invest time and effort in maintaining healthy relationships, because the people closest to us can either pull us down or lift us up.
Eating a balanced diet and exercising regularly can help prevent drug and alcohol abuse. Maintaining an active lifestyle and being healthy makes it easier to handle stress, which lowers the likelihood of relapsing into drug or substance abuse. However, individuals who are already addicted can seek help from a reputable recovery facility and speak with a professional.
And that's all. Thank you for listening.